Welcome back to PALS TV, everyone. Our final segment should be a lot of fun. We did it last week, and it was a blast. I'm sure today will be no different. Cooking with Phil, joining Phil in his kitchen, and learning to make cottage pie. And every single time I'm on with Phil, I always learn something new, and I guarantee today will be the same. So really looking forward to this final segment of the day on PALS TV. Chef Phil?
All right, welcome aboard, gang. As Aaron said, we're going to be making cottage pie today. There are a number of different things, but we've got to get started pretty early. So we're going to go ahead and get right to that. And as we go along, I'll be explaining more stuff, what this is and how we're doing it. So the first thing we need to do is start boiling some potatoes because we need mashed potatoes for this. They take, about 10 minutes to boil. I've already got some boiling water in there with some potatoes already. I'll just do it. So I'm using one of the yellow-skinned waxy potatoes. You can use the baking potatoes. Those are big Idahos and russets like that. But it's not going to give you as good of a mashed potato. They're really good for fries. They're really good for baked potatoes. But there's just too much starch in there, and you get those gluey kind of mashed potatoes that nobody wants. When you are peeling your potatoes, after you get all the skin off, you want to take your peeler, flip it so you got a fat side up, and do a nice flat part on the end. So that when you set your potato on the cutting board, it doesn't rot. And that will keep you safe with your knife, which is the important thing. We're going to cut these fairly small. If you've got time, you can just kind of chop them apart. You can even throw them in whole to make mashed potatoes. But since we're moving along for time, we're going to go quickly. And again, just like any time I cut anything, I want to use that claw technique. Keep my thumb back and my knuckles towards the blade so that the side of the blade will hit them before it chops my fingers off. We will just dump the potatoes in the water. Get rid of our scraps. That's directly in the compost bin. And then we clean our knife. Always clean your knife as soon as you use it. All right, I'm going to set my knife down, blade away from me towards the back. And I'm going to grab my salt pig. Salt this water. You can pretty much not over salt a potato. Potatoes need salt. You want to do it early. If you make the mashed potatoes and you forgot the salt, you throw it in at the end, it's going to taste like salt instead of like potatoes. Get it in early, throw in a bunch, it'll be great. We're also going to need half of a smallish onion. Last time I didn't start with a whole onion, so let's do that. We've got the top leafy side. It's not really a leaf, and then we've got the root side. Never cut the root off. You got to leave that on, but we're going to cut through it. We've got the root looking like that. We drive the knife down and slice. And then we've got a nice flat surface again. Just set that back there. And set your other half somewhere because you always need half an onion. Now we're going to just whack off the stemmy leafy part, not the root. Get rid of that paper. Bang with the compost. And then we peel back that top layer. And that'll give us a handle so that we can keep our fingers out of there. We're still using that claw. And then this is awkward because I want to show it to you, but We're not going to use a whole lot of this. We're only going to take our knife in about halfway because we only need about a quarter onion. It's really for flavor more than any texture or anything else. And that'll give us plenty of flavor. So several slices back in towards the root. And then we're going to put our knife sideways and bring it back. You want to be really careful on this one because you are cutting towards your hand. You kind of slide it through. 2, 3 slices will do. Go back just as far as you cut before. And pull that off. And then we just slice right through and done. That goes over there. Our scrap goes to our compost. Now we pick up all of our onion and put it in our pan of heating oil. And what do? We wash our knife. Because we just use the knife, we wash the knife. Use the knife, wash the knife. It's a basic rule of life. You use it, you clean it, you put it away. Doesn't matter if it's your equipment, doesn't matter if it's your body. Same thing all the time. Use it, clean it, put it away. All right, we'll give these onions a bit of a stir to make sure they get all through the oil, and that fat will carry that flavor. They're doing all right for a second. Now we need a carrot. I've already chopped up several carrots. We're going to go with about 4 that are about this big. Since this carrot is going to be fully cooked and in something, you do not need to peel the carrot. You only need to peel the carrot if it's going to stay fresh and you're going to put it in a salad or something like that. You just need to wash the thing. So we'll give it a quick rinse. Make sure when you're doing that, you give it a good rub to get into all the little wrinkles and stuff. So if there's any dirt in there, you get it out. And we will knock off the tip and the end into our compost. So a carrot, unfortunately, is not the same size all the way. And we want everything to be about the same size. So we're going to chop the carrot apart. Looks like there's about 3 sections here. This end is about all the same size. The middle's all about the same size. And then the end. So that's how we'll cut it. And we will split the carrot lengthways. And again, this will give us a nice flat area to set it down and be safe. You've got to be real careful to get to that section. The middle, we're going to not only have, but we will quarter those to make them about the same size as our very bottom. And for the big, thick, fat end, we're going to split that into 3. So 2 slices. 1 down there, 1 down there. With that, and then, just like we did the middle, we'll essentially sixth it instead of quarter. What about that? So we've got these nice chunks. They're still flat. We'll get our claw. Just make tiny little bits. So your cottage pie is basically a casserole. It's beef, a couple of different types of vegetable. In this case, we're going to be using carrots and peas, which is the usual thing, but you can throw anything you like in there. I've made it with green beans before. You may have had it and were mistakenly told that it is shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie is made with lamb because that's what a shepherd has in their yard. If you own a cottage, then you would probably have a cow nearby, so you would make it with beef, and that's what the cottage pie is. All right, scoop those carrots into the center, move those aside. And we wash our knife. You want to be careful when washing your knife that you don't cut your hand, also when drying it. Again, as I said before, this is a knife I've used a long time, so I'm very comfortable with it. But the best way to wash your knife is to set it down in the sink, flat, and then just reach in with your sponge and go away from you, because the blade is also away from you, toward the blade. Don't ever clean the blade or come at the blade. You're going to hurt yourself. We'll set that aside. Give our onions another stir. And we will start the beef going. I use a fattier ground beef than most people. It doesn't really matter in this case. We're going to take the fat off and drain it. But all of the grease that creates will help us carry our flavors. When I just touch raw meat, gotta wash my hands with soap. We'll knock that apart a little more. Stir the onions in a bit. And then we need to season it. You'll recall before that we did the season, or most of the spices at least, in the oil instead of on the meat. We said that's because that oil helps all those flavors bloom. Because ground beef is so fatty, you don't really have to worry about that. You grab your salt pig, throw a pinch of salt in there, maybe 2, and give it a little black pepper. I like these one-handed ones because if I have a filthy hand and I'm doing something with that one, I can grind with the other. There it is. I'm going to use curry powder in my cottage pie. A lot of people use something like paprika, sometimes thyme. I don't think that there is a better taste on this planet than curry powder and Worcestershire sauce. So that's what I'm using. We're going to want about a tablespoon. So a good mound that covers the center of your hand. Remember, always pour your spices into your hand or into a measuring device instead of directly into the food. When you inevitably pour out too much, you don't want that all over your food, and then you got to figure out a way to get rid of that, so much of that flavor, which is really tough to do. Particularly with salt. If you oversalt something, people talk about putting vinegar in it to get rid of that. Or a potato will absorb that. None of that works. About the only thing you can do is add a lot of fat, because fat dulls flavor on its own. It helps carry for spices, but if it's in the final product, it will dull your flavor. The problem with that is then you've got a bunch of fat in your food, and you get hypertension and heart disease and all these bad things. All right, so we just need this to brown pretty thoroughly. We don't want big chunks of the ground beef because we want it to be mostly cooked when it gets there. It doesn't need to be completely cooked because once we put everything together, then it will continue cooking, but we don't want to spend a lot of time doing that because we will burn the top. Give it a couple of stirs. Heat up just a touch. I'm going to wash that off real quick. And our potatoes should be about done. If you take a knife, I'm just going to use the big one. If you push it through a potato, it slides right in there, then it's done. If you do that, you got to wash your knife. You can try that with a skewer or something if you have a metal skewer. That will also work. But you almost always have a knife on hand. So now we just need to drain our potatoes, and then we can start that process. Make sure, if you need it, you've got something to protect your hands. Turn off the heat before you move the pot. Otherwise, you'll forget. Over. Tough to get them all out there. Don't set your empty pots back on that still hot burner. That'll scorch the bottom of your pan, and especially if you have non-stick, it'll destroy it. Generally, I whip potatoes in the stand mixer, but we're going to go ahead and do proper mashed potatoes this time. I'll get my beef another story. Here. You can certainly add flavors. A lot of people like to put garlic in there. This is one of the times that garlic powder is your best friend. You don't want to put even minced cloves of garlic in there. It feels weird once you get a nice fluffy potato. So you get your potato masher, you grab the bowl, and you just start mashing. You don't touch any other ingredients yet. All this is potatoes and salt. And it's really steamy and I can't see anything. You want to go around from the sides and come in and then spin. You can also just spin the bowl, but in this case I've got a metal bowl and it's really hot. And every time I move my hand, I start to burn myself, so I'm not doing that. All right, you don't need to completely mash at this stage, but once it starts chunking together, you can see that, and instead of the little bits, it's just starting to be a solid. You will take your butter or margarine, somebody used all the spoons. You can always use a knife instead of a spoon as long as it's clean. But we just clean this knife because we just use it so we know it's good. Depends on how much butter flavor you want. You want probably at least a tablespoon of butter. I have a butter problem, so I'm going to use more. And then I'm going to clean my knife again. Always use soap when you're cleaning your knife and hot water, hot soapy water always in the kitchen. You'll notice this is a particularly good idea with butter because otherwise the butter doesn't come off. You need a soap to get rid of the fat and break it apart. Incidentally, that is also why we wash our hands with soap for the coronavirus, because it is covered in fat, and once we destroy that, the virus will die quite easily. Just soap and water on your hands all the time. All right, we've worked in the butter until we can't see it, and then we add milk. How much milk is always up to you. The more milk you use, the brighter and fluffier it's going to be. If you don't use enough milk, you might be out. You can make mashed potatoes with just butter or margarine, whatever. But they're going to be that kind of gluey, stringy stuff. The more milk you throw in there, the bigger they're going to be. I'm going to use probably 1/3 to 1/2 cup in this because I'm hand mashing. And when you hand mash, they are not quite so fluffy. Oh, let's cool down quite a bit. Again, I'm going out and pulling towards myself, like canoeing. And then just spinning it around to make sure I get everything. Every once in a while, just give it a stir like that. So I'm making sure I don't leave out any little pockets of milk that I haven't incorporated in. This will not be as creamy as if you whipped it. There'll be little chunks that you will inevitably miss, and that is fine. But still, we end up with mashed potatoes. Regular mashed potatoes. Once you get to that stage, set it aside for a moment. We're going to come back to our beef. Give it another stir. And we take all the carrots that we did earlier, a bunch earlier, put them in a little bag. Throw them in there. You don't necessarily have to cook the carrots at this stage. They'll give you a little crunch in there. But cottage pie is a very traditional British food, English in particular. And the hallmark of British cooking is that everything is exactly the same temperature or texture. Everything looks the same color, and everything tastes exactly the same throughout. It's just the way it works. That's why nobody that really likes food loves those things. But I do. So give those a stir. We want to get all that fat from the ground beef to cover our carrots, because that'll get that flavor through them as well. This is a good stage to give your food a check. You should always taste your food as you're going by. I've got chopsticks and pork. I need both more salt and more curry powder. Again, whatever recipe you have, that's your starting point. If that's not the way you like it, that's not the way you do it. Change your how much of whatever they tell you to put in there until it's what you like. So your carrots don't need a lot of work. They just need a bit. Let those continue to heat. If you like your carrots quite soft in this, so because you don't like the chew of a carrot, you can put a lid over this for a little while to keep the steam in, and that will also keep those nice and wet. One of the reasons we use carrots in this is because of how sweet carrots are. The older you have a carrot, the more sugar it develops. So if you like a sweet carrot and you want a sweet taste in this, which is not bad with the curry, get an old carrot. And if you buy the carrots with the stem or the fronds still attached, then that makes them even sweeter. Little baby carrots that you get in there are not sweet at all, carrot-wise. So if that's what you're looking for, cook with those. Oh, those seem to be working. Get your bag of frozen peas. No reason to mess with fresh peas in this case. You don't really have to cook them. I'm throwing in about half a cup of peas here. So we've got a meat shortage on right now because everybody working in the meat plants is getting the coronavirus, and we're not getting food. There's places you can only get a couple things of meat. There are ways you can plump this out so that you can use just a little bit of meat. Always the classic for that is mushrooms. Chop up mushrooms nice and small. You could puree them, but that might be a little much for this. Just really tiny pieces of mushroom. You'll throw them in there. They'll act just like beef when you're cooking them. Now You can burn a mushroom, but you can't overcook it. All right, those seem to be going all right. Generally, I would go ahead and drain the fat out of this, but there is not a lot of fat in here. There's so little fat in here that I'm going to add some more. I'm going with corn oil here. I generally go with corn or grapeseed because they have a nice high smoke point, which means they don't burn quite as fast as others. Some people will tell you to cook with extra virgin olive oil. You can cook with olive oil. It's a good oil, but don't cook with extra virgin. It is a very delicate oil, and heating it at all will throw off your flavors. That's the stuff you use plain in a salad. All right. So now we have a little fat in here. This is mostly just loose. You can definitely just do this as loose beef and vegetables and then make the casserole with that. But you kind of want it to hang together if you can. So since we've got fat in there, we're going to take a little bit of our bench flour. It's just flour you use for everything. About a fistful to start. And just coat everything. What we want here is for the flour to absorb all the fat that is in there. If we were doing this without everything else in there, that would be what we call a roux. Just flour and fat is a roux. That is the basis for gravy. So if I still see any liquid fat, then I need more flour. And I need just a touch more flour. No matter what it is when you're cooking, you kind of do everything by eye and taste. That is not true when you are baking. In baking, you have to be precise. If you change an ingredient in baking, then it throws off your dry and wet mixture, your acidity, your sugar, and all these things change. You've got to find a way to correct that. All right, so our flour's absorbed all the oil. We're going to take a little bit of heavy cream. About 2 tablespoons I'm going to put in there. And that is going to get absorbed by this fatty flour we have. And that will create a type of gravy. It'll be a very thick gravy, almost a paste. We just stir to incorporate that in there. When I stir to mix things, I tend to take my spatula or spoon, and I go from I put the blade side down, I go far away from me, I pull it back towards, and then I turn and flip it back over. And then I just go around in different ways. If I can move the cooking vessel, then I will do that. But this one's kind of tough. All right, so that has started to cook up. Now instead of that loose thing, we get big chunks that all stay together. That's what we're looking for. Generally, when you're using a glass cooking dish, or a metal one even, you will need to line it or grease it in some way so things don't stick. This still has enough loose fat in it that will cook out that it will grease itself. So just take your mixture, slide it right in to your casserole. Then with your spatula, spread that out. Nice and flat. If you have a non-stick pan, then take your non-stick pan and ditch it. If you're using cast iron or carbon steel is just like cast iron, except you can pick it up without 4 strong men and a boy. Those need to be cleaned right away. Someone move my paper towels. That's all right, I got kitchen towels. So you give it a quick wipe to get anything that's in there out. This is still extremely hot. So you need to be careful. There's also something you need to do immediately so you don't destroy your pan. And you take a very little bit of oil. 1/4 teaspoon. Just need a touch. And then with 1/2 of a clean towel, wipe that oil into your hot pan. Make sure you get the edges and the outside. For carbon steel and cast iron, this is what we mean by seasoning. It is not because grandma's biscuits and gravy have been cooked in this thing and the flavor stays in there. That's not seasoning. What happens is the hot metal, whether cast iron or carbon steel, bonds with the oil to create a seal around the outer surface. That's what keeps it from rusting and also keeps them very non-stick. Once you've wiped it down, then wipe it with the dry side because you don't want any leftover oil. That'll make it nasty. For that, and then you put your pan up. I think it's still hot, too hot for me to put in. All right, now we've got this all set. I forgot to add the Worcestershire. Don't add this at the beginning when you're adding the spices, which is why I forgot it. Because there's so much water in Worcestershire sauce, it'll just cook off. But since there's a second cooking process, you can throw some in. That is purely to taste. I like it a lot, so I put a ton in. So again, I will stir to incorporate this through. I hope that wasn't too much liquid. It doesn't look like it was, so I don't need to add any more flour and restart this whole process. Get that nice and flat. I'm going to clean this off. Doesn't need to be clean, just rinse. And now I will take my mashed potatoes and put them over the top. This is the crust for our pie. Traditionally, in the English language, pie does not mean a sweet dessert. It just means a filling covered by something. Places that aren't America, you have to specify if it's a dessert pie. Everything else is just a pie. It's a chicken pie, beef pie, kidney pie. In this case, a cottage pie. So we're just going to spread this in an even layer, and it's however much you have. Doesn't matter how thick this is at all. Sometimes I make a lot of potatoes, so I've got a really thick top. Because I love the mashed potatoes. What you do want to be sure of is that everything is covered and you don't have any little holes where your filling can poke up out. We want to keep all the liquid from turning to steam and coming out of this. We want it to stay in there and create more of our gravy. Once we get that, we just dust it up basically for color, but also a little flavor. People almost always go with paprika these days. I think everywhere. But again, I like the curry powder. Doesn't matter how you cover it. Make a nice design. You can put a smiley face in it. Once that's done, we throw it in a oven with the broiler on high. Oh, 5 to 10 minutes. Closer to 5. Try not to drop that. Closer to 5. If we go too long, we're going to burn the top of our mashed potatoes. So what do we do for that? 5 to 7 minutes. And what are we going to have for dessert? I got you. Don't worry. So we're going to take a plate. Get standard caster sugar, or well, if it was salt, it'd be called table salt. I don't know what to call it. Granulated sugar. Cover the bottom of that plate. You may need more later. Just keep it on hand. And we will take a lemon. We're not rolling or heating this lemon because we're not trying to get all the juice out of it. We're just going to make some slices. Whack off the end. All right. So all that white in the lemon instead of this nice yellow color, that white is the pith. It is not tasty. All the delicious citrus flavor in the lemon is the yellow bit. Whether it's outside or inside, to be honest. You just cut several slices. And then with those slices, and this is just to make them easier to eat, you do not need to do this. We're going to insert the knife at the halfway point and then slice down through the rock. That lets us fold it like this. You can do that for a lot of different design type of things and make things look fancy. We're doing it to make them easier to eat. We take our lemon, and crust it up with the sugar. And just set it on a plate. I don't think this dessert has a name other than, oh, I need a dessert, and this is what we've got in the pantry. Most great cooking comes from, oh, I have to eat this. In fact, all French cuisine is, we don't have any real food, I guess this is what we're going to eat. And it's really good stuff. All right, nice crusted sugary lemon. You could also make a simple syrup, dip them in, and caramelize the things, but that seems a lot of work. Rinse the lemon and the sugar off of my hand. And then I'm going to get an egg white. Do not crack your eggs on the side of a rimmed dish. Crack them someplace flat. If you crack an egg on a rimmed dish, the shell gets in. And the easiest way to separate is with your fingers. You just hold it, give it a little shake, and all the white comes through, and the yolk is still in my hand. I need another dish for that. I put the yolk there, and I can use that in something else. Definitely wash your hands after eggs. With soap. Now we'll take a little powdered sugar. I'm going to go with about half a cup of powdered sugar. Oh, that's what I was going to use. And we can throw these lemons on a lined baking sheet. I'm using aluminum foil because I can't find the parchment paper. We're going to throw these in here too. They need very little time. We want the sugar to crystallize a bit. So we've got our half cup of powdered sugar. And we're going to go with about almost a 3/4 pint of cream. Not quite the whole thing. And give it a whisk. If you really whisk it, you can make a, I mean, this is whipped cream if you really whip it. That is not what I am doing. We're going to add the egg white in here to give it a silkier texture. So it's kind of half between meringue and egg white. When you are whisking anything, some people go around in a circle. Don't ever do that. You want to go back and forth. Right? You can also do a lifting motion if you're doing eggs, but nothing else. But make sure you get enough air in there and gets everything really mixed up. So this is not very thick. It's still quite liquidy. And I think a little too liquidy even for me. I'm going to add a little more powdered sugar. Plenty. Yeah, but another whip. Rinse this off. We're going to plate our dessert first because it's simple. We take our plate. Be careful getting your hot pan out of there. We're going to take our lemons. That's about done. What's a spatula? Like one of these lemons, I've got like a glassy shine on it from the sugar starting to caramelize. Throw that lemon on there. And I have a jar of fig preserves that generally I would have with a baked brie. Not in this case. Just a tiny little dollop of your preserves. You can use any. I just like fig. I bet raspberry would be nice. Keep that on there. Oh, take off the hand. Give that another shake and then just drizzle this over. Well, it's not a great, exciting look. Oh, that is. But you have a warm, sweet lemon with a fig and cream sauce. And you just tear into it. That's really nice. All right, so let me get this out. We can get on. Okay, so this is what we look like at the end. And we just whack one through. And this is our plate. And we're well out of time, so Aaron, over to you.
Another great segment from Chef Phil's Kitchen, coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio. Before this segment started, I said I always learned something new in these. And my whole life, I thought I was eating shepherd's pie. To find out it's actually cottage pie. So thank you for that, Phil. Yeah. Hey, Caitlin, you have a question?
Yeah, can we have a recipe of that?
The
Yes,
recipe?
absolutely.
The
I
cottage
believe we've
pie.
already got the ingredient list certainly already up.
All right.
Yeah. You know what we'll try to do is we'll post these in meals and ingredients prior to his shows each week. We'll start that next week. And then after we're done, he can put together maybe some sort of recipe for you if you are interested in that. But that's a great suggestion, Caitlin. So thank you.
And next week it's fish, Caitlin, so you'll be happy.
Perfect. Okay, well, that concludes our show for today, everybody. I think we've run out of time. We had a blast. It was a lot of fun today throughout. We had wonderful topics, wonderful presenters. We're very, very fortunate to be able to spend our time with you here on PALS TV. So come back and join us tomorrow morning, again, 10 a.m. We have another really cool slate scheduled. Looking forward to a lot of fun topics and just different variety of material we can give to you. So come back and join us tomorrow morning. Have a great night in the meantime. We'll see everyone soon.
Here, gang.